Tenzin, thank you so much joining us here, talking with Voice of America Persian Service. I'm so thrilled and excited that you're here.
Thank you so much for having me, Gambiz.
So I myself never had the chance to talk to anyone from the either former Tibet administration or current Tibet administration, so I have questions for that. Let us know how the Tibet administration works. From what I understand, it's a government in exile, so you're not actually inside the country, so you're outside.
Yes.
How does it work? How do you... Let us know how it works.
So first of all, I used to be the former, working at the Central Tibetan Administration. I used to work there for the looking after the welfare of Tibetan people. I was working at the Bureau of His Holiness the Dalai Lama in Delhi. So I have moved to 3-4 different places in India. So what the Central Tibetan Administration, which is the administration that looks after the welfare of Tibetan people inside and outside of Tibet, and the priority, the aim for the administration is also to be able to resolve the Tibet-China conflict. So those are the two main objectives of the administration.
No, I understand that from those who are outside or living in exile or outside the country. I mean, yeah, you could be, so much of a, supportive help, whatever they need. But if they're inside, which means inside China, so would that make it either hard or impossible even for you to do anything for us?
I'm very glad you brought that up, because it is in that sense that we have difficulties in dealing with. We would always want to look after the welfare of Tibetan people inside Tibet, but as you know, information really flows out of Tibet because it is under constant censorship under China. People cannot come out of there, people do not have freedom there. So it is only through inside informations or some informations that we rarely receive that we are able to know what Tibetans are doing, how they are living, how much they are suffering, all of those things. So it is not much that we are able to do that because of the regime that they are suffering under right now.
Yeah, from atrocities inside China, there are at least, one that I was hoping we see or hear more. We don't do much. Uyghurs in Xinjiang, they are documented what's happening to them, the camps, what they're going through. Also about Tibet, we know things happen, but never gets the big echo, never comes in a big voice, never comes in details. Why that is?
This is very much so because of the influence of China all around the globe in every sphere, because they have the resources, not just the human resources, but the technological resources. They are very much at the front runners of AI as well. So in every sphere where you look at in the world, China is there. And we are, I wouldn't say fight, we are very much trying to look at the resolving the Tibet-China crisis with them actually, and that's what the middle way approach is all about. We are trying to find a means for the Tibetan people to live inside of Tibet, but within the Chinese Republic. So it is very difficult for us, and it is also, I'm sure, it's very difficult for the Uyghur minorities and other ethnic groups that are very much suffering under the Chinese regime. So,
yeah, I think I think we heard Dalai Lama said several times that he doesn't seek independence. He wants more autonomy from here. Maybe you should more aim for push for autonomy. So maybe they can give you that independence that you want.
Yes. When we talk about more autonomy, it's not more autonomy we are actually asking for. It is the Tibet that used to be before Chinese came inside Tibet that we are asking for. It is all of the Tibet that Tibetans live in. Tibetans all around Tibet, such as Utsang, Amdo, Kham, these are the 3 provinces of Tibet, which has been very much divided into regions in where Tibetan Autonomous Region is just restricted to very much, very less of what Tibet used to be, and the other parts of Tibet which are very much economically benefit for the Chinese authority, they have very much included that within the Chinese sphere. So, so that is what we are asking for. All of those regions to come under one leadership, to have a genuine autonomy, because there is an autonomous region out there, but it's never really autonomous. It's just for the namesake that there is. But we are seeking through the middle way a genuine autonomous place for the Tibetans to be able to preserve our religion and culture and language, with that 11 other categories that we want to have self-governance on.
What are the things that Tibet is dealing with central government of China that you want more autonomy of? Do they interfere with your education, way of life? What is it exactly that they're trying to achieve, and you would like to get more autonomy of that?
So we are asking for them to let us just be Tibetans and to not erase what we have, because what we have is something very precious. The religion that we have, the language that we carry, the culture that we carry, it is not just for the Tibetans. Of course, we are Tibetans, we fight for it, but we see a benefit for the whole humankind in being able to preserve that. His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, has always been, talking all over the world about warm-heartedness, cultivating happiness from within, interreligious harmony. So these are some things that we Tibetans, when we grow up, we learn about all of these things, and that is something that we want to preserve. Yes.
Is it fair to say that the Chinese want you to forget your Tibetan side and become Chinese?
That is very much what is happening inside China. We have Tibetan private institutions that teach Tibetans, allow Tibetan children to speak Tibetan. Those schools are shutting down. The monasteries that we have, the big monasteries that we have, they are shutting down. They are reducing the number of intakes for the monks and nuns to be able to have that monastic education. And yes, so we are not, like I said, Tibetans are not allowed to be Tibetans inside Tibet.
Why the focus on Tibet? I'm sure the rest of China are not that much of a homogeneous, just one person ruling there. What's the significant specific that Chinese have over the Tibet?
That is something that I feel like should be preserved by China, because of course Chinese are made up of different ethnic groups, but the way we have been treated when the Chinese authorities have come into Tibet, that wasn't the way you want to have a culture and a region come into your, that's what they call their motherland. And that is something that we would like to do in terms of the middle way, but that is not how you come and just occupy them, kill people, destroy the monasteries that they have, the culture that they have. That is not how you do it. But even so, we are trying to find a solution to this within the frameworks of their own constitutions. And that is amazing, that is visionary, the middle way approach that was envisioned by His Holiness the Dalai Lama and later adopted through democratic process by the Tibetan people and its government.
Well, you mentioned the way that China keeps it quiet because they, use their, influence, diplomacy, just to keep it quiet. I understand they can do it to some certain countries. I mean, Venezuela is more than happy to receive money from Chinese Communist Party because it comes without any attachment. But Europe, United States, I mean, they have laws, they have human rights, they have conditions whenever I work with any country that on human rights, on money laundering or any black market. This should not be work, but some certain countries in the world, I understand why would I say anything, but why we're not hearing that much from most democracies in the world, Europe, United States, Canada?
Yeah, it is, like I said, the Chinese influence is everywhere. Whenever a country or an institution raises the issue of Tibet, they would not just accept it, not even pay heed to it, because they would want the other country to first accept that Tibet is a part of China and that it has historically been a part of China. And that's what all the countries are doing. They are just basically following what China are saying, that Tibet has always been a part of China. And that is, of course, not the case. Tibet had always been independent. And that's the reason why I feel Chinese authority have been influencing all of the world, and that's why all of the world are not being able to come in support of Tibet, because it's an internal part of China. It's an internal issue that they have, domestic issue within China. But if you want to talk about Tibet, which you would really like, you have to first accept that Tibet was never a part of China. So yeah, that's what I think.
So the Chinese made it to an internal issue that is none of the concern of other countries. So they can just do whatever they want. And if anyone says anything, it's an internal matter, is none of your business.
That's what they do. That's what they're doing.
You mentioned that they don't allow monasteries, for example, to be active or to work properly. What would you do in that area? Does it all come like underground, in hidden? What's the workarounds that you have to deal with the pressures that's coming from the Chinese government?
Right now, what's happening in Tibet is we're trying to spread the information, what's happening inside Tibet, through the little information we get, to the whole world what's happening in Tibet. But we can never really do so much about it in terms of how we will be able to directly influence what's happening in Tibet. So what we can do as Tibetans, and for all the people that care about human rights and religious rights, that's something to be talked about. We can just talk about it. We can talk about it to all the people to see what's happening in China and Tibet. And that's something we are focusing our energies on.
Let us more about the Tibet expat community, wherever they are. What's the dynamic? Are they working? I mean, for me, we have an Iranian expat everywhere, but when you go politics, I mean, they're just from this side to another, and it gets very messy. So you never get them into some kind of a unity. So what's the case for the expat community of the Tibet?
That is very true. When people are displaced from their own country, people do tend to feel the distance among expats, because they would be distanced from themselves, from their own people, because that's the condition that they have to go through. They are forced to do it. But in terms of the Tibetan diaspora, we have been very lucky to have His Holiness the Dalai Lama as our leader. That's something that has united all of Tibetans, and that's something that we all can come together and put our energy and our focus on through him, for the Tibetan freedom movement and for the preservation of our culture and identity and language.
Is there a conversation inside Tibet community that maybe it's not a bad idea to get some kind of a consolidation with the Chinese, and maybe we should work with them? Because we understand the preservative attitude that we want to be ourselves, that we want to be autonomous. But do you have that? Because many communities have that. They say, oh, maybe work with the Iranians a little bit, so it's not a bad thing to do. Do you have any some kind of a...
You're asking with the Chinese?
Yeah, they say, oh, let's work with Chinese and settle things down.
Yes, the middle way approach, like I said, is very much on that angle, lens, but we are definitely not compromising in anything through the middle way approach. It's finding the right solution, being realistic about how we carry forward our Tibetan freedom movement through. I wouldn't say it's compromising by heeding to what China is saying, but it's more aligned with how Tibetans are going to be after they secure a region that is very safe for them to practice their own culture and language.
So you work with Dalai Lama closely for years. Let me ask you something about the situation of the world that we are. Why is it that we have so many wars and aggressions, and it's just on fire right now, from Middle East to Europe, to Sudan, to Yemen? What's your worldview says about the status of the world that we are in right now?
Please allow me to clear this. I wouldn't want to say I have worked with His Holiness the Dalai Lama. I have very much worked under his guidance. That has been the direction that I have always within myself going forward with my life and the work that I have done. So I have worked in his office. And your question, coming back to your question, I understand that these are happening because we fail to see each other as human beings, and that's something that we tend to forget. Some individuals have always been capitalizing on those crises, conflicts, people harming each other, and it's only because of some individuals that these things are happening. People who are suffering never wants those things. And it's surprising to see those individuals are not being able to see human beings dying and not just non-living things dying. It's humans that are dying, and it's just surprising for me how they are not able to see that and still capitalize on all of those things.
Yeah, I think not seeing suffering of the people, and also going, just taking up matters to your own hand and using violence is something that I don't think anyone or even any religion is immune of.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually what I wanted to ask you about, because that's the question that I have for long. We saw what's happening in Burma or Myanmar with the some from Buddhists, that everyone saw them as a very peaceful. We saw the acts of aggression and violence through them. How is that even possible? Is it something that you even could expect to see?
For me personally, when I first heard about the issues that was happening in Myanmar, I couldn't believe what I was hearing, because it was coming. Most of the violence was coming from a Buddhist community. That was beyond my belief, but I wouldn't at the same time label them as being a Buddhist, and for that matter any religion, that the harm is happening, that the violence is being taken place. That is some categorization that you're putting them upon. It's just people losing their mind and not seeing humanity, basically, and inflicting harm upon each other. So I wouldn't say, it is surprising for me to hear that Buddhists have been doing that, but that's only because I am a Buddhist too. But it shouldn't be the case with any other religion. Yes, so I wouldn't want to categorize them through any religion.
No, trust me, when I heard it first, I thought it's a misinformation. It's a propaganda. Someone made that up, because I've seen Buddhists their act of defiance, maybe setting themselves on fire, maybe go through fasting. I've seen that, but through others, I've never seen anything to see them to act like that. So I would say that maybe we're not immune to violence and inhuman as we think we are.
That is very true. I would also like to point out, when you talk about inflicting violence, what has happened in Tibet is there have been 192 self-immolations already, and those are some form of, the violence that they have to do upon themselves because they have nothing else to do to, call out the oppressions that the Chinese authorities are having on Tibetans. And that is something that needs to be talked more about. 192 self-immolations, and that includes more or less 16 or 17 minors as well. That is something that we need to talk about, and it is only because the Tibetans in Tibet have no other option now, and that's the extreme measure that they have to take for the people of the world to have a look on what's happening in Tibet.
Well, the number that you said, self-immolation, in what time frame it was? Year or?
It started at around 2008 or 9, after the Tibet-wide demonstration that took place, and it has been continuing until fairly recently. So yes, that's what.
The communist China does a technique. It's known as techno-authoritarianism. They're spreading it around as well. They're giving this ways and means to in Iran, just to make sure no one can do any kind of unrest or uprising. Is that the same case that they do in Tibet as well?
I would like to understand that on similar note, because Chinese authorities have been resorting to surveilling the Tibetans in terms of DNA now.
Wow.
So, how far can you go in terms of surveillance? We've heard there are, listening devices hidden under different tables in different places of Tibet. We've heard about the grid system of surveilling people. Sometimes it goes to such a sad case in where sometimes Tibetans have to basically think about what they have to say within their own home and their place around them. And now they have come to this kind of surveillance, and where they're just profiling DNAs.
It's the most invasive surveillance technique that I've ever heard on DNA. How do they do that? You just collect, or
they collect blood samples, and they profile the DNA. So they have a company, I forgot where they were based out of, called Thermo Fisher, has been providing them the tools for that. The Tibetan organizations that work closely on what's happening in Tibet has been successful on having Thermo Fisher stop doing what they have been doing, supplying the Chinese authority with all of those tools. Yes, so that's what's happened.
At some levels, I understood that you said the Chinese are they're using their influence so no one talks about Tibet, but some of the issues that they're going through, it's very hard to even imagine what they're going through. That I wonder why we're not hearing more or in details of what's happening, or if someone wants to hear more, what they can do, how they can find out.
On an individual level, I think being able to be informed of what the organizations and research groups who are looking very close into what's happening in Tibet, reading their reports on all of those issues will keep you very well informed. But on an organizational level, such as international organizations can pressure China to have them take them to Tibet to see what the reality is, by allowing them to freely access what's happening in Tibet, to know the situation that Tibetans are going through. And yes, that's one way of being able to know what's happening in Tibet.
So last week I talked to a researcher, US-based researcher, just came back from China. We were talking about everything. I actually asked him about what's happening, how they hiding Xinjiang issues over there, and he said there's a staged area that they take people and they just give them a tour and there's nothing wrong. And usually they take people from Islamic countries like Turkey or Qatar, and everyone says there's nothing here to see, and it's done. No one even talks about that.
That's exactly what's happened and what's happening. So if they are very confident on how happy people are there, just allow the independent and foreign journalists to go freely inside Tibet and Xinjiang and southern Mongolia and see how people are. And that's why do you have to give them, have a proper itinerary of where they want to take them. Just let them roam around if they are so confident about how happy people are there.
Yeah. Also the example of foreign countries. I mean, Turkey was one of the countries who was very vocal on Uyghurs in Xinjiang. Apparently, as soon as China put a investment in the Turkish central bank, that sound gone. Nothing. They don't even mention it anymore.
It's very sad to hear that.
From the peoples in the world, from the communities, from countries, which are the ones that you're most hopeful to get support and help for the Tibet?
So a law was recently signed by the Biden administration, the Tibet Resolution Act, and Canada has also signed some laws in where we are able to, in where they have recognized that Tibet is a region of dispute, and these are some things which really helps us establish the fact that it is still a region that needs to be a conflict that needs to be resolved. So
when they label it a region of dispute, would it give you some leeway internationally on UN basis somewhere to follow your case?
That would definitely help, but I don't think the Chinese authority would allow any international interference into this crisis. So we believe that all of these measures will help the Chinese authority come to the table and have a discussion with the Tibetan representatives.
We can talk for hours. I have many things to talk to you, but let me ask my last question, because your time is very valuable as well. What's the best way, if anyone wants to say, I want to do something about what you just mentioned, the people are going through? What's the best way for them to do that? I mean, independently, they just want to be part of it.
I would request them to just read about what's going on, to know what we are striving for, because the middle way approach is the policy that we carry going forward with this conflict, and this policy is visionary in terms of not just helping the Tibetan but also helping the Chinese as well, Chinese authority, and that is something that needs to be talked more about. So just reading what's going on in China and the minority groups that are being oppressed there, reading about those things and not just listening to what Chinese has to offer. They do have a lot to offer, but there are many things that is going wrong in China as well. So just read about them, listen to what the people who are closely working with them have to say about it.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that you came here and talked to us.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.